Across Britain, there are many legends, stories passed down from generation to generation, and some do have a hint of truth to them. This is one story that is not very well known about outside of the people who live in this local area, but it's one story that the world should probably know. I'm in Erwarton in Suffolk, which is a beautiful little village close to the coast. In fact, the sea is literally just over there. But over 120 people live in the village of Erwarton. But this place, according to the legend, may, if be true, be one of the most important sites associated with Tudor history and the wives of King Henry VIII. And I could be standing mere feet away from where the heart of Henry VIII's most notorious wife is buried, under that organ. I'm inside the village church, St Mary's, and just down the road is Erwarton Hall, a place which was owned by a man named Sir Philip Calthorpe, the uncle of Henry VIII's second wife, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn allegedly spent a lot of her time here as a child before she went to France and then became a favourite of the Tudor king. And legend has it that she was the most happiest in her whole life when she was playing in the grounds of the hall here in Erwarton. It is a lovely story, a young woman playing in the grounds of a splendid Tudor mansion. But we all know what happened to Anne Boleyn when she married the king. She is a rather controversial figure still to this day. Some still hold strong beliefs that she was a homewrecker who caused a huge amount of religious turmoil, which is still felt as the king declared himself the supreme head of the church to divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, so he could marry Anne. Still today, the current monarch, Charles III, holds this title and supremacy over the church. But within years of marrying the king, Anne Boleyn was making her way into the Tower of London for her trial, being accused of adultery, treason, and shockingly incest. But the truth was that everyone inside of the royal circles knew that Anne, the Queen, would be executed regardless of what happened at her trial, as the king had already ordered an executioner, a swordsman from Calais in France, to take the head off his second wife's shoulders, so Henry VIII would then be free to marry his third wife, Jane Seymour. On the 19th of May 1536, Anne was executed inside of the Tower of London, her head being taken off in one swift blow from the sword, and her body was carried into the chapel next to the scaffold where it was then buried. But was part of Anne Boleyn smuggled out of the tower? During renovations to Erwarton Church, this work took place in 1837, and builders uncovered a small casket hidden in the wall of the chancel, literally there. This small tin box was heart-shaped, and some did claim that it had the initials AB carved onto it. This box was, according to the legend, opened, and it contained dust, allegedly the heart of Queen Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife. People come to this tiny village today to learn about the legend and to imagine that they're in the presence of the heart of a queen. After the building work was done, the heart-shaped casket was then buried right there, allegedly, under the organ, where today a small plaque marks the spot where it allegedly sits inside of the vault, undisturbed since that day that it was placed there. There is also, right under the organ, a crypt. But as mentioned, this is a legend, a story passed down that people in this area do believe. Grandparents had passed this tale down onto their grandchildren for many years. What is incredible about stories like this is that it's up to you to decide whether you believe it or not. If this was true, then it would mean that the heart of Anne Boleyn would have had to have been cut out of her body after her execution, and then taken out of the Tower of London, and then taken to this small village on the Suffolk coast, and then hidden inside of a wall, presumably being kept for another day. One man, a priest who had served in this church for over 50 years, said of the alleged discovery of the heart-shaped box, and I quote, "I was in the church with stonemasons and carpenters, helping to finish up the job that was in 1836, when the architect who gave the orders that the south wall in the chapel should be made good where there was a bulging out. The masons started work and very soon came upon a leaden box covered with lime and dust. We were ordered to open it, but there was only a little black dust in it, and it was then soldered up again and placed on a coffin in the vault in the Lady Chapel. And if the vault was opened up again, I could at once find it. My grandfather always told my father that old men and women in the parish had told him, as their parents had told them, that the Queen's heart was in the church and would be found some day or other. So directly I saw the lead box, I said to them all, "That's just what my grandfather told my father." And my father told me. It was the truth. It sounds far-fetched, and as a child, I can guarantee, when you learnt about Henry VIII, you were told how the king wanted to erase everything about Anne Boleyn. This is partly true, but what isn't as well told is the fact that Henry did allow some mercy or kindness for his wife. The swordsman who was brought in was an act of mercy, ensuring Anne faced a reliable death rather than the axe. Also, he had the Tower of London and the scaffold covered in expensive black cloth to mark the grim day of her execution. At the time of the Tudor period, the remains of dead kings and queens would be embalmed, and their internal organs, such as their hearts, would be removed after death, being literally cut from the body. Hearts were then buried elsewhere inside different boxes away from the corpse. This happened with Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third wife, who had her heart buried inside of Hampton Court's Chapel Royal, and Anne Boleyn's daughter, Queen Elizabeth I, her heart was even removed after her death, being placed in a tin inside of her burial vault in Westminster Abbey, and this was even one day opened. It would have been perfectly foreseeable and in keeping with the times for Anne Boleyn's heart to have been removed, but this would have also meant that her body would have had to have been embalmed to be preserved, and it is believed that she was just thrown inside of an oak chest following death and was then buried in a rough grave inside the Tower of London's chapel. What I'm doing is trying to play with your mind, trying to get you to question what you've always thought about history. There are still some incredible discoveries being made about the past, and there are many mysteries that exist waiting to be solved. Does the heart of Anne Boleyn lie literally below my feet where I'm standing, under that organ? That's not for me to tell you what to believe. I've just given you the facts. That's what's remarkable about history. Although we like things to be set in stone and concrete about the past, every now and then the world can be turned upside down. Oh, and just one final thing. The local pub that was open here, just literally down the road, but it's now closed, was actually known as the Queen's Head, referring to Anne Boleyn. Oh, and the font over there, which dates back to the 15th century and has been used ever since, does have 4 Tudor roses on it, the symbol associated strongly with Henry VIII's royal family. And there's also 2 lions on the font, symbols of royalty or kings and queens. Coincidence? It is a beautiful little church, but could you imagine that a queen's heart is buried literally under there? Yet hardly anyone knows about it. I don't know, if I'm honest. Amazing, amazing story though.